5, in which Madame Olenka returns with reinforcements and Max seeks gainful employment. On Monday, which was the 5th morning after some vessel, but which vessel, going where, had left Queensbridge with William and Mary Starling on board, Grammy was proved right. Immediately after breakfast, she settled herself on Max's front steps with a book. Max wore the overalls again, and the straw hat too. He tied the red bandana loosely around his neck, and he crouched beside the flower beds along the porch. The front door stood invitingly open on this gentle April morning. A breeze carried the faint city smells of baking bread and horse dung and brewing coffee, mixed with the sound of distant carts, and from the lake and river a certain watery freshness. Puffy white clouds floated on the surface of a pale blue spring sky. When the bell rang, Grammy announced in a low, satisfied voice, "I told you, that is a woman with a purpose." That morning, Madame Olenka wore a suit the color of bricks, and the same black hat and shoes. Her earrings dangled down copper on either side of her thick neck. She had a uniformed man behind her, a policeman, pointing straight-armed at Max. She said, "This is the man." The policeman leaned over the gate to look at Max, who ignored both of them. The policeman cleared his throat. Max looked up as if he had heard a buzzing insect, then returned to his weeding, as if the insect was just a honeybee after all, nothing important. "I've seen that face on wanted posters," Madame Olenka said. "I know I have." The policeman cleared his throat more loudly. "Ahem. Sir?" Madame Olenka had no patience for politeness. "He said his name's Mister. What kind of a name is that? He's up to no good, I tell you. He's up to something." She hadn't noticed Grammy before, but now she did because the little silver-haired librarian stood up, a finger marking her place in the book she carried, to approach the gate with a mild, grandmotherly smile. "A good morning to you, Sven Torsen," she said, and the policeman quickly removed his helmet to hold it respectfully in front of him. "Mrs. Knives," he said. The helmet had flattened his brown hair, and he looked shyly down at his black-booted feet. "It's been a long time." "Since you were a schoolboy," she answered. "What were you, 10? I'd say it's been quite a long time. You do seem to have grown taller." Now he did look at her, and he grinned. "All grown up. Grew wider, too, didn't I? I'd have thought I'd seen you in my library at least sometimes. You were a good reader, I remember." "I've got my work now," he apologized. "So I see," she said. "And a wife, 3 children," he said. "A dog, a garden." "Some other year, then," Grammy laughed. "But why are you here, Sven Torsen? And who is this person you've got with you?" Madame Olenka had concerns about the gardener, the policeman explained. Madame Olenka demanded, "What do you know about him? What is he doing in this empty house?" "Do you mean Mister?" Grammy asked, and turned to look at Max, who, as if he had heard his own name, glanced at the group by the gate. He stood up as though Grammy had summoned him, but he did not move any closer. "What kind of a name is that? Mister," Madame Olenka said scornfully. She was standing at the gate beside the big policeman, shouldering her way in front of him to get a better look at Max. Grammy answered sharply, "No more strange than Olenka in my opinion, but Sven Torsen, why does this person, why does she say the house is empty, when the family just left town a few days ago?" "That she didn't say, Mrs. Knives." "Well, it's a curious thing. If I were a policeman, it might make me a little suspicious. In any case, the house isn't empty. Mister is to live here and take care of things while my daughter and her family are away." "Who is he, officer? I demand that you find out." "But Mrs." Officer Torsen said in a patient voice, "this lady says he's living here. She was my school teacher, and now she's the city librarian." "I've known Mister for 12 years, Grammy said to Officer Torsen. "More than 12 years, and If there is any question she cares to raise about his character, I will vouch for him." "Not true," cried Madame Olenka. "That is just not true." "Well, Mrs., Officer Torsen said in a not-so-patient a voice, "I don't know why you would say that." "The librarian is lying." Madame Olenka's copper earrings danced angrily in the sunlight. Grammy didn't even glance at the woman. "You know me, Sven Torsen," she said. "Am I a person who lies?" "No, ma'am," he answered, and turned to his companion. "We'll go back to the station now, Mrs., if you don't mind. Mrs. Knives has the right of it. I am wondering why you're so interested in an empty house, and how you came to know it was empty." Her part in the scene over, Grammy returned to her step and her reading. Max got back to his weeding, and the two visitors went off down the narrow road. Even when they had gone out of sight, Max and Grammy continued to play their parts, just in case. Just in case of what, they couldn't have said, but they felt a need to be careful. After a rather long time, longer for Max, who was on his hands and knees, ferreting out deep-rooted weeds, than for Grammy, who bathed in the warm sunlight and in fact closed her eyes to let her mind wander, Max went inside to wash and change his clothes. Grammy joined him for an exchange of compliments. "Good job that," and "You don't even lie," followed by a congratulatory handshake and an order. "Go find yourself some work, young man." "Where?" Max asked, but Grammy was no help. "That's up to you. The house does need to look inhabited. I won't quarrel with you about that, although—" "Fine," Max said, once he understood that she had no advice to give him. He stopped, really paying attention to whatever it was Grammy was saying. Instead, he studied himself in the full-length mirror his parents had hung on the entryway wall. She was a good ally, his grandmother, but she was getting bossier by the minute. However, he wasn't going to worry about that right then. Right then, he needed to see that he looked enough like a student at the university. A rather poor student, someone who needed to find odd jobs to earn a little money for food and school supplies. He had changed into dark cotton trousers and heavy work boots, a collarless shirt, and the old blue jacket his father wore to play the part of the poor but honest farmer who came to ask his rich neighbor for the loan of a cow in a miser made miserable. Max twisted a gray and white checked cloth cap in his hands to appear both nervous and hopeful. He watched himself in the mirror and thought. Overacting. He tried just turning the cap around and around in his hands, and that was much better. "I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't gone suspicious and been here to help," Grammy said. "Do you think you're safe?" "Living here alone?" "Max, are you paying attention?" "No," Max said. "We'll talk at supper." "Good luck, mister." "Who needs luck?" Max asked, admiring himself in the mirror.